It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
Hey, welcome back to the Real Estate Breakfast, your weekly deep dive into the Australian property market with some of the biggest names in real estate. And I tell you what, if they're unsure about what is happening, then the rest of us really need to pay attention. Right now, we're all sort of navigating, aren't we, these conditions that are shaped by global tensions, particularly Trump with the ever-changing Iran conflict and the flow-on effects smashing the local economy. We don't need it, nor do we want it, but it has been dumped into our lap. It's not the easiest of times, and we need to just sort of catch a break, don't we, over all of this? The 1990s were a breeze compared to living through some of the times, these challenging times that we've got. And if you've got a point of view on how you're managing rising costs or the changing market conditions, what you do is you can send us that voice message below, or you can email us to myrealestatepodcast@gmail.com. Well, it is a Friday, April the 10th, and looking forward to another weekend. If you're celebrating your birthday today, happy birthday to you. I see that Hugh Hefner would have been 100 today. Now, there's a guy that just lived in his bubble, but he died, didn't he, back in 2017? And it was on this day in 1970s that the Beatles broke up. That was the end of the Beatles. What is your favourite Beatles song? Well, Hey Jude from 1968 is considered the band's biggest commercial success, their best-selling single worldwide. That is their single, not an album, sold over 8 million copies. My favourite Beatles song? Let It Be, from the same year in 1970. Well, the Victorian government has been warned that Victoria's first home buyer support scheme is increasingly out of step with the market, with its $600,000 stamp duty cap now covering a shrinking share of Melbourne properties. The Herald Sun reported that instead of helping affordability, it's concentrating demand into a narrow price band, effectively pushing prices higher in that segment. As property values rise across both Melbourne and regional areas, industry experts are calling for a review, warning that the current settings are limiting buyer choice and unintentionally distorting the market at the entry level. Are you finding that to be the case firsthand? Well, let's go to Sydney right now and catch up with Leanne Pilkington. And good morning and welcome back, Leanne, to the Real Estate Breakfast. What is your favourite Beatles song?
Hello, I love the Beatles, can I tell you, but maybe Come Together. I can't believe that it's been all that time since they broke up.
Yeah, well, as a world, we need to come together because of all this crazy stuff that is happening. Yeah, so as I mentioned, this issue of Victoria's first home buyer support scheme, it's pretty simple, isn't it? Too many buyers chasing too fewer properties under the cap.
Absolutely, and it is going to put upward pressure. It's basic economics. When supply is low and demand is high, prices go up. It's very competitive in that section of the market. There's not a lot of choice. And if the government genuinely want to encourage first home buyers, they really need to take a closer look.
Yeah, because what has changed is the market itself. When the scheme was introduced, $600,000 covered a large portion of homes. Today, that price point is increasingly rare, even for units, which has been one of the real surprises in the Melbourne market, the way that they have really run away. As a result, many first home buyers, they're just being priced out or forced into highly competitive segments. Now, there's growing support to lift or remove the cap entirely, allowing demand to, spread more evenly across the market. I mean, as you say, it comes down to economics. That you would think is the common thing to do. Where's your thinking on that?
Yeah, it absolutely makes sense to review it. I'm not sure about removing the cap altogether because you don't want to be providing assistance to people who don't genuinely need it. But I do appreciate whatever level you set the cap at, that section of the market will unfortunately start to face upward pressure because there will be high levels of demand.
So this article is talking about Melbourne in particular, but it's really, it's just a case of the way that the market is going, and we'll talk about another aspect of this in just a moment. But it's right across the board, isn't it? Because of the way the market is raising itself in price.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it. Although, we are right now in a changing market. So it's going to be interesting to see the impact of that. But yes, absolutely. Anytime there is a concentration of buyers at one price point, it definitely has an impact.
So let's just sort of drill down for people, especially first home buyers, who are finding themselves caught in the shift of the current property market. As you say, buying right now what felt like the peak of the market before these conditions turned. So with rising interest rates and softer demand, the timing suddenly really matters more than ever. And their situation reflects this broader reality, and that is that the market can move quickly and confidence can change just as fast because timing in property is never a perfect science.
And none of us can ever really get the timing perfect unless it's by accident, right? You can't plan those things because the market does shift unexpectedly at times. Although in saying that, all of the first home buyers that bought into the market prior to the latest round of increases would have had a buffer. The bank would not have allowed them to buy and not be able to afford the interest rate increases because we all knew that we were going to start seeing increases sometime in 2026. Certainly there's been plenty of unexpected things happen in 2026, but we were experiencing high inflation and we knew that there would be interest rate increases to come. So hopefully those first home buyers were prepared for that and can financially afford that. But yes, you're right. If they bought prior to Christmas, they probably bought at the peak of the most recent cycle. And we will see prices in some areas, probably most areas, start to at least either stabilise or come back.
Listen to expert perspectives with exclusive real estate conversations and supercharge your knowledge base with us. Know your property. Available for breakfast from 6 a.m.
Two things can be true at once, right? Like we're talking about the market's become a little softer, where borrowing costs are higher and competition has eased. It is shifting the balance of power. But the two things that can be true, because you've got different things happening in different markets and within the same market. So you can have segments that are running higher, like they're increasing, but in other segments it's kind of flattened off a little. Is that the way that you can read that?
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, different people have different pressure on them. There's a third of homeowners, third of the population, I should say, that don't have a mortgage at all. And so these interest rate increases are not impacting them. There is also an increasing number of people getting made redundant for all kinds of reasons. Most recently, some of the software companies, being able to build software or services on AI that we would not have been able to imagine even a year ago means that those subscriptions that we all pay every month, we don't need quite as many of those now. So there's lots of shifts in the employment market that then impacts people's ability to actually pay a mortgage. Of course, the interest rate increases have an impact on that as well. So, but like I say, it's not an even impact across the entire market. So each area and and different sections of each area are experiencing different conditions and different pressures. So it does make for a really challenging market for people to predict, but we all need to understand that people need to buy and sell for all kinds of reasons, and they can't necessarily pick the perfect time to do it.
Yeah, very much in this transition phase that you're talking about. Sellers, they are adjusting their expectations. We talked about this recently, how, it's taking vendors a little bit of time just to get into their headspace of where that property price is. people are becoming, particularly buyers are becoming more cautious in negotiations. Is this fair to say? They're taking longer. It feels like they're taking longer than negotiations, and it's no longer this sort of rush effect to get into the market.
Absolutely. Yeah, the fear of missing out is not there right now. It's definitely a shift to a buyer's market without doubt. That does mean that you're quite right. Negotiations take longer, properties stay on the market for longer, but it doesn't mean that the market stops. And that's the thing that we all have to remember. Some vendors will be more flexible with their price than others. It just comes down to their motivation.
Yeah, and the Reserve Bank, they're watching everything with a lot of interest right now. When do you reckon we're going to land? Where's all the feedback coming into Leanne Pilkington from members and your inner circle with relation to what might happen between now and 2027? How many of those rate rises?
Well, I mean, the most pessimistic is 3, the most optimistic is 1. And I'm just really hopeful that the frustrating thing for all of us right now is that we cannot control fuel prices. We cannot control the impact that is also having on food prices. And those are the things that the Reserve Bank is saying, well, look at inflation. As a result of this, we need to put interest rates up. Like so many people, I really struggle to get my head around the logic of increasing interest rates on a population that's already stressed.
It is interesting times that we are living in. Just yesterday, Donald Trump gave the hierarchy there in Iran 14 more days before he will possibly bomb them into oblivion. It's very, very unstable. We've got to work with it from day by day. But Leanne, thank you so much for coming back on to the Real Estate Breakfast this morning. Enjoy your Friday, the upcoming weekend, and maybe play 1 or 2 times the Beatles come together.
I will absolutely do that. Thanks for having me.
Good morning. If you are in Cairns, a little bit of Cairns real estate history this morning. It all started when Cairns began as a port and service town, supporting mining and agriculture back in the late 1800s. Through the 20th century, tourism transformed the region, driven by its proximity to the Great Barrier Reef. That connection cannot be underscored. It is very desirable for people to go into Cairns and then off to the Great Barrier Reef.
Every morning from 6 a.m, we bring you the latest real estate news with diverse perspectives from leading industry experts. We deliver the most property podcasts across Australia every week.
So we got that. The last weekend of January was over 70%. The first weekend of February was over 70%. Then the rate rise, bang, it went under 70%. That shows vendor confidence waning, as well as obviously clearance rate dipped to 55%, showing that that's well and truly a buyer's market.
What about the vendors at the moment? There's still this headspace, isn't there? You know, you go back 12 months ago, they're in that range when they're clearly not. It's just a cycle, though. It takes time for them to catch up before they fully sort of grasp reality.
We find that whenever there is a major change, so an external shock, I guess, that impacts the property market, we find that any campaigns that are sort of caught out in the middle of that, that's a bit unfortunate, because those owners start off with one set of expectations and then something shocks the market, which means that that set of expectations is not necessarily going to be delivered on. So then they've got to decide, well, do I want to meet this new market or not?
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.